In this video, we're going to talk about sex and happiness. I'm Dr. Diane, I'm your libido doc, and this is a really important conversation because when it comes to happiness, according to studies, and I'm going to reference a study done out of a university that basically analyzed about 30,000 participants. So it was a pretty well done large study. And I'll put information about this particular study and references in the show notes for you. But essentially, what was found in the study was a couple different things. One was there's a direct correlation between people that reported sex once a week and not just relationship happiness, but life happiness and satisfaction. In fact, there's one part of the study where they even took sex versus income, and they actually said based upon income and happiness or sex and happiness, which one when increase, so people going from a certain income level to an increase at income level, when they had an income change, how much happiness changed, versus when they had a sex frequency change, how much happiness changed. And they actually found that the sex frequency improvement and increase improved happiness more than money did. So this is super important, and I think it's related to the reports of this around relationships tend to be happier. Relationships tend to be better when people report sex at least once a week. Now, what the study also found is when people had sex more than once a week, from a happiness standpoint, people did not report being any happier, right? So when we are looking, I find this study to be interesting because it's always, an interesting thing to say, like, what is normal as far as sex life? Well, I do feel like it's individualized, and happiness is only one of the things that sex can produce, but there's so many other things that sex and intimacy can produce. Oxytocin, regulation of stress. So there's a lot of other things that can happen from a proper and a healthy sex life. But when we're just looking at happiness, we could say once a week would be a great goal because we see that more than once a week does not actually produce more happiness, although it might produce other things, and for many couples it does. So from that standpoint too, this is a huge motivating factor to work on sex and work on intimacy. And if you and your partner are really having sex less than once a week, this may be reason to engage more frequently. One of the things that can happen when marriages and partnerships become low sex or even sexless, and by sex, I always want to pre-frame that what I'm talking about is not just about sexual intercourse, but about anything in the sex and sexual intimacy, say, expression, right? This can look a lot of different ways in the bedroom. And so one of the things you might consider, and one of the things that can happen if you're in a sexless relationship or a low sex relationship, is it almost becomes like a habit, right? It almost becomes like your new habit. When we go to the gym, most of us that go to the gym regularly, we have a routine. We either wake up, we go to the gym right away, maybe we do it on the way home from work, maybe a lunch break, but there's a habit that's associated with going to the gym, right? Most of us have a bedtime routine. Brush your teeth, floss your teeth, or wash your face, do a few other things, go to bed, right? So most of us have a bedtime routine. And so one of the things is that if sex is going to be in your life at least once a week, then having some sort of routine around when you do this can be helpful for busy couples. It doesn't sound sometimes as sexy to schedule it, but it can really be helpful. And so if you're in a low frequency of sex, sometimes there is a level of ripping the Band-Aid off. There's many times I've talked to couples where you're not having sex much. It's almost like a little bit of a nervousness, right? That can happen with a partner that you've never had sex with. There's that nervousness, but excitement. But except in longer term relationships, when it almost feels like there's more on the line if something goes bad. Sometimes if you haven't had sex in a while, sometimes one of the things I find is that people can have like the nervousness without maybe the excitement. So it's just nerves then, because it's like, gosh, if this doesn't go well, and maybe you're not relating very well to begin with, and if it doesn't go well, then there can be fear that it's going to even, worsen things. So sometimes it can really help in partnership to just name this, if this is happening, to just name what is happening and say, hey, I want to have a conversation about sex and having more intimacy. And you can even talk about research in this video. You can have your partner watch this video and basically then say something along the lines of that, just share that you're nervous. So you want to do this. And if you're nervous, I'm not saying you are, but if you are, or you're having any emotion about it, sometimes just by naming it and bringing it to light, it can take the edge off. And if you do this and you haven't had sex in a while and you go into it as like, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Maybe there's a level of like awkwardness, like, perhaps like when you had your first sexual experience, most of us had a little bit of awkwardness in the beginning. That's totally normal. Maybe it's a little awkward, right? That's okay. That's okay if it's a little awkward. It's okay if it's not perfect that first time again. It's okay if it's not perfect the first 20 times again. It's okay if it's never perfect, right? None of that is problematic. It's only a problem if we make a story out of it and turn it into a problem. So if we just look at it as like, okay, this is practice again for something that got lost in the relationship, and take some pressure off of it, oftentimes that can really help open up that trust, that safety, and that ability to explore. And again, I would use some research like this as motivation as to why, if you're not having intimate expression on a regular basis, why this is valuable. And there's also studies out there, just for anybody that's watching this that is not partnered, that does not have a lover. There's also studies that are showing that sexual satisfaction when you are single can be just as high, if not even higher, than when you're partnered through self-pleasure and masturbation. So don't worry if you're watching this and you're like, well, that's not going to do anything because I'm not partnered. You can still help yourself, right? This does not have to be a partner-only activity. You can still get a lot of life satisfaction and life happiness just by, through self-pleasure, just by making sure that you make your own sexuality an important part of your at least weekly life. So that's some of the connection between sex and happiness, part of getting out of that vicious cycle, right? Because sometimes when we are not feeling as happy as we want, that can lead to a low drive. But then having sex can make us happy. But then if we don't have sex because of the low, because we're not happy in a good mood, that can lead to more unhappiness. We got to get out of that vicious cycle. And that's where I'm saying sometimes it's just like ripping the Band-Aid off and going for it if you haven't been intimate with your partner a while. And just work on taking it lightly, work on taking it not seriously, work on just looking at it, if you've been out of the practice for a while, just look at it again as an exploration between you and your partner and an opportunity to begin again. So I hope this has been helpful. I will see you soon in another video. Please do subscribe and share this with your friends and family. Please don't keep me a secret. I'll talk to you again.